Hello, welcome to the antidepressant controversy. So, do you think antidepressants will completely solve your health dilemma? Do you think mood disorders are a brain chemical imbalance? And do you think, or has somebody told you there's no dietary link to depression? So, they're the questions that we want to answer in this special event today. So, question is, do we need more answers? Well, in Australia, we do need more answers. We're the second highest rate in the world of antidepressant prescriptions per capita. We're coming second behind Iceland, and it seems to be increasing at 25% per year. And the questions that we ask is, will antidepressants completely solve your health dilemma? So, functional medicine refers to an approach that considers the interrelationship of various body parts as opposed to diagnose and treating body systems in isolation. And so we have found if we treat depression from a functional medicine point of view, the outcome, the medication outcome or the outcome of your disease is a much better. We've also found that sufferers of mood disorders have significantly higher incidence of comorbidities. So quite often if you have IBS or cardiovascular disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome and pain syndrome, you're much more likely to have a mental health issue or have depression or stress or anxiety alongside the two. It is a question of which one's the leader, which one comes first and which one comes second, but definitely they seem to be tied up together. So if we're just treating depression in isolation, then the outcome won't be as positive as treating the body as a functional organism. The other thing that's been looked at in the science circles at the moment is the antidepressants and how they're actually working. So current scientific analysis demonstrates that non-specific and placebo effects accounts for a very high proportion of clinically observable effects in antidepressants. This is not surprising because the disease has hopelessness at its core symptom. And when they analyse the results of antidepressants, sometimes they're not the results that they expect to see. The other big question about antidepressants at the moment is how they're actually working in the brain. We've always thought, or what we've thought for the last 20 years, is when we're using SSRIs, which is serotonin reuptake inhibitors, they increase the amount of serotonin in the brain and therefore our depression gets better. We also know it takes 2 to 3 weeks for a response to these medications, and we've known that for a long time. But when the research was done, when these drugs were developed quite a long time ago, we didn't know as much about the brain as we know now. We didn't know we can make new brain cells. We didn't know that different parts of the brain can have different functions. And we didn't know so much about the brain and the anatomy of the brain. And so now when we put that to the test, it seems that it doesn't really quite correspond, because if we get increased serotonin, then we'd expect it to feel better. But we don't always feel better straight away. We know there's a 3-week break. So we think now it's not so much got to do with serotonin, but it might have something to do with the other chemicals that are happening in the brain. So the thought now is that mood disorders aren't a straight chemical imbalance. So it's found that it's not a straight transmitter deficiency, and then if you replace transmitter, then it sort of works again. It's a really complex system, and there's more to it than just a single neurotransmitter imbalance. What else we found out is that actually what you eat makes a big difference. They did this huge study. It's 3,486 middle-aged people were asked what sort of diet they eat. What's their regular sort of diet, whether it's whole food or whether it's processed. So they were put into 2 groups, the processed food group and the whole food group, and they were followed up 5 years later. And the results were that people consuming a processed diet were much more likely to develop depression and actually develop any other mental health condition than the people who were on a whole food diet. Now, this has been also reinforced with a whole lot of other studies that have come out that definitely whole food is very protective against mental health disorders. So what we've learned is the mind and body are connected. It's like a super highway from the mind into the body, but definitely into the gut. It's like 3 lanes going one way and 3 lanes going the other way. So the gut is definitely not Las Vegas, because everything that happens in the gut happens all over the body. So your mind influences your body influences your mind. The quickest and fastest way for a mental health outcome is to look at it from an integrative point of view. So what I've developed to integrate your health is my mind map. And what this mind map lets you do is to actually have a plan. We were actually having 10 plans of how to work towards a health goal. And each heading has its own plan. So when we look at testing, there's some really sort of interesting testing you can do around depression, stress, and anxiety. But there's also testing of the comorbidities. So we want to be able to know where you're starting and where you're going. We want to know if there's any evidence-based supplements will help. We've already talked about nutrition, what lifestyle changes that will help towards a disease outcome, or actually a non-disease outcome. We want to know what exercise you're going to do. We want to look under the heading of yoga. We want to look at mindset. Really interested in reading, like very much of the direction you go in the future is what books you're reading right now. Connection to others, there's some great studies out there saying if I connect more to others, then my health will be better. And you know that too. You know, if you go and have lunch with somebody you haven't seen for ages and you talk about some really positive things and you get a lot of energy for each other, when you walk away from lunch, you feel so excited and good about life, and that's just a day-to-day response. And global, what you're putting back into the world. So global transformation is what you're putting back into your family, into your team, into your community, into the world. And that's like a double win situation to me. Like if I go and do something that's helpful to somebody else, I feel better and they feel better. So to me, it's a double win situation. So the idea here in the pink circles is to have strategies, put some strategies in place or some plans that is going to help in your individual situation to lead you to a healthier outcome. And then you might look at those 10 circles and think, oh my God, I've got a day job, I've got a family, I've got everything else to do. How am I going to fit that into my life? Because already my 24 hours is pretty full. So the idea is to think of 10 easy things to do. And so there's a psychologist called Fogg, and what Fogg believes in, he's created a Fogg behavioural model. And what that is, that if you think of hard to do things, you need a lot of motivation, and quite often you just don't get to the trigger that triggers it off, and so it doesn't get done. But if I think of an easy to do things like eat an apple, jump on the spot 10 times, go out and ring a friend, they're sort of easy to do things. I could do them quite easily. I wouldn't need a lot of motivation, and I could tick them off at the end of the day. So what Fogg says, that what if we choose 10 easy to do things rather than one hard to do thing, and just do it and maybe even tick them off, and then we'll be heading towards health in easy and effortlessly, without creating these big hard things and then telling yourself that, oh, I have to do it and I don't have to do it, and there's all that self-talk involved. Just go for the easy things. So the yellow stars, put your easy things in there, review it each week. If something's from an easy thing that becomes a bit hard, we'll change it for something easy. If something's an easy thing and then you do it anyway, well, choose a new thing, put in the star. So review that on a regular basis, and you'll be surprised how quickly things start to change. So we'll have a quick look at some of these headings here and come up with some ideas of what you could put in those pink circles. So for the testing circle, there's mood and stress questionnaires. I've got one if you'd like one. We can do blood testing. Your doctor might already have some blood testing. There's a lab down in Melbourne doing neurotransmitter profiles. We can give you referrals for that. And a lot of the testing is with the comorbidity testing. So quite often with a mental health issue, it will mirror what else is happening in your body. So if you can heal what else is happening in your body, then often the mental health goes together. So that sort of testing is really useful. There's a great positive psychologist in the States called Sonia Lumbersky, and she's had some really interesting study. And in fact, under the heading of reading, I would really recommend her book, The How of Happiness. And so when she's determining happiness, she's come to see that it's made up of three chunks. 50% of happiness is your set point. That's what you're born with. You can't change it. That's just it. 10% of the circumstances, so whether I have $1 million and live in a mansion or whether I have no money and sleep on the beach, that only accounts for 10% of my happiness. The other 40% is all the things that I can do. So I can change my happiness by 40%. That gives me a lot of power to be able to change the direction that things are going for me. Nutrition, so we know from studies that a poor diet is linked to a smaller hippocampus. A Mediterranean diet increases BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And that's actually a chemical they actually think that serotonin in SSRI, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, actually affects. But that research is still happening, and so I'm sure in a few years' time we'll know exactly what those medications are doing. We know that flavonoids nourish the brain, that whole foods are happy foods. We sort of know from studies that we need to balance protein, carbohydrates, and fats. It's no use just eating carbohydrates all day. The energy runs out and we never feel great on just carbohydrates. We need a balanced diet. So you start with protein at every meal and add 2 servings of vegetables, add some good oils, and then we get a sort of balance happening. What we're doing is we're aiming at consistency, not perfection. You're not feeling great, don't sort of beat yourself up if you haven't got it exactly right, but it's often just looking at protein, carbohydrates and fats, and really sort of the carbohydrates are probably there, you're probably looking at a bit more fats and a little bit more protein. But we're happy to lend a hand if you need a bit more advice, show us your eating plan, we'll see where we can add a bit more in there. Evidence-based supplements, so we know magnesium, if we haven't enough magnesium, it's linked to depression. We know B vitamins, you get up and go. They're things that really help with your neurobiology, so we want lots of them. We want to look at some of the herbs to help us along the way. Mitochondrial energy production, we never feel great if we don't have lots of energy. And we know that's reduced in depression, so we want to look at strategies to increase your mitochondrial energy. We know that high CRP levels, which is CRP levels are linked to inflammation, and inflammation levels are linked to depression. So we want to be able to have some sort of strategy in place to bring down our C-reactive protein levels. The GABA, which is very much involved in sleep too, we know that's reduced in depression, and often people that are depressed find it really hard to sleep. So GABA might be part of your answer. So we really love the spices. So saffron is the world's most expensive spice, but it's also the spice that makes the biggest difference in depression. It increases BDNF. And it's got some really interesting studies that have now come out on the use of saffron in depression. It's been drug tested against drugs that you know, tricyclic antidepressants and Prozac, and found to be pretty much on par with them without the side effects that you might expect from the medications. So when I'm thinking of depression, I'm thinking of B vitamins, I'm thinking of magnesium, I'm making sure that you've got a balanced diet, I'm looking at good oils, but I'm also looking for the spices, and the 2 spices that come to mind is saffron and turmeric. Turmeric's the anti-inflammatory. Saffron works in the brain to help the neurotransmitters. Together they make a fantastic cocktail. So I've just got a quick case study to give you a bit of an idea. So Susan's a 59-year-old female. She's presenting with low mood. She's being diagnosed with depression. She's not on medication yet, but she's really thinking that medication might be her answer. She's got poor stress coping, feeling tense, anxious, and tired. It sort of sounds really familiar. I'm sure if you're not suffering from these symptoms, you know somebody else that may be. And you know what? Mental health is diagnosed in 45.5% of Australians. And that's what's diagnosed. How many times have you felt some of these symptoms, but you haven't rushed off to the doctor to get a diagnosis? So I'm sort of wondering whether the other 55% is just non-diagnosed. So there's nothing that can't be discussed here, even though we think mental health is not something to talk to your girlfriend about or discuss with your naturopath or discuss with your doctor. But I think it's really important. Like when you put this together as a story, it's so common. Like poor stress coping, feeling tense, anxious, tired. Once had some panic attacks not too long ago. Not quite sure how she metabolizes folic acid. MTHFR is a new snippet that's been tested in the blood labs, and it's got to do with your folic acid metabolism. She has a job like we all do, sitting down, office worker, sedentary lifestyle. She's drinking coffee. I look out the window and everybody in the street seems to have coffee in your hand. Alcohol, yeah, she doesn't really drink that much alcohol, and she makes most of her food at home. So not an unusual case scenario. What do we have for Susan? So I've been thinking about Susan, and what I've put together is a special shake. And so the shake is going to have some saffron in it, plus all the cofactors to help you feel better. We're also going to add some coumarin, which is some turmeric liquid. We're going to put some blueberries in there. We're going to add some water, and we're going to blend it up. And we're going to drink it twice a day, because you don't want to be taking lots of tablets if you're not feeling great. Let's have a drink. So a drink for breakfast, a drink for afternoon tea. We can throw some magnesium in it. If you feel like a little bit more B vitamins, well, that's an option. We'll just have to make sure they're methylated in. If you're a bit like a Susan and you don't metabolize B vitamins particularly well, we want you on a fairly sort of balanced diet. We don't want to be too picky about the diet, but we do want it to be as balanced as possible. We want to look at some yoga, we want to do some breathing exercises, and we want to be able to move my body, like even for half an hour a day. If I spend most of my day sitting in a seat, the body just feels better. There's countless studies to know that we're going to feel better with a bit of exercise. So I've seen Susans in my clinic. Susans come in at least once a week. It takes about, like, it's quick. 2 weeks I've got Susans ringing me and saying, look, I'm already feeling better. And that's not doing everything. That's doing the bits that they can do. So there's lots we can do, and there's lots of hope, and it's a real sort of avenue to walk towards. When we go through the other little things on my tree, on my health plan, let's have a look at some of the other ideas. So lifestyle. So I put 5 S's together with lifestyle. So sleeping is so important. Not too much, but also enough. So there's both ways with depression. You can be one of those people that sleep all day, and you can be one of those people that's sort of trying to survive on 5 hours a night. Neither are great. So your goal is 8 hours of sleeping, and it's finding some routines or some strategies around that to actually sort of try and get some routine in there. So you're aiming towards 8 hours every night. Stopping. Sometimes you just need to stop, slow down, and think of a plan. Skipping. I love skipping in there because it's very hard to skip and not smile. Anyway, that's just out there. There's no clinical studies for that. I just made that one up. Sitting less. So we know that we want to move a bit more. And we know that stressing, finding things to stress about, is not going to be helpful. And sometimes it's just stopping and recognizing that we don't need to stress quite as much as what we are at the moment. Exercise. So we know from studies that we need to move our body every day. I always say half an hour a day. If you're looking for a little bit of inspiration, I challenge you to look up the YouTube video, 23 and a half hours. You'll be laughing before you get to the end of it. But it's also very inspirational to get you out there and exercising. So mindset is huge. It plays a huge role in any mental health decision. And it involves the thoughts, your beliefs, and your emotions. And very much like you think something, and if you think of it enough times, then you start believing it. And beliefs that I have, they're not necessarily truths. They're my truths, and I might think the world is flat. The world could be flat for all I know. That could be my belief. I've said it to myself enough times. I believe that the world is flat. But in actual fact, the world might be round, but I'm believing it's flat. And so beliefs are things that I hold very tight to me, and the things that I believe, they might not be truths, they're my truths, but they're not the world's truth. So I've got to be very careful about my beliefs and see if some of them are just limiting my potential to get well and to heal. So it's a really good idea to look at some of those things. It's a really tricky thing. It can be very hard. I've written a book about it, and I'd like to introduce you to the book. I'm just in the printing process at the moment, so I'll like to extend an invitation to grab hold of my book, because in the book there's 9 simple strategies to work towards your mindset. And so it's a really action book. It's short, it's easy, but it helps you give the tools to change your mindset. Part of this is connecting to yourself. And so the question is, have you ever seen a depressed person who's living their life with passion, meaning, and purpose? And that's what you want to find. You want to find what you love, what means something to you, and what your purpose is. If you've got your purpose and heading towards your purpose and you love it, it's very hard to not feel some sort of inner excitement. Connection to others. So I love this one. But here other people do too. A new study finds that belonging to a social group helps to alleviate depression and prevent relapse. And it appears the closer the tie to the group, the better than the results. And I feel that too. I'm in so many different groups, and each group gives me something a little bit different. We are hardwired to connect to people. And when we are connected, we feel supported and we get a better feeling about life. When I'm isolated or lonely at home, then my mind starts chattering. I might feel fear. I feel stuck. It's the social connections that make us feel happier and healthier and more secure, but especially positive social connections, the ones that sort of really sort of warm our insides. And I always suggest that you know who the positive ones are, and you might know some people that are not quite positive. Well, I'm going to really encourage you to head towards the positive ones. Spend more time with the people that make you feel better, and maybe less time with the others, because you're creating your direction in life and you're creating your purpose, and it's very hard to create that when you've got a lot of negativity coming in. So social connections, choosing your social connections and choosing how to connect with others is very important. Now, yoga, I don't know if you know what yoga means. It doesn't mean making funny shapes on sticky mats. The actual definition of yoga is finding the spaces between the thoughts. And so, yes, you can do it on sticky mats if that's how you like doing yoga. But you can also use it as meditation. You can try some mindfulness. You can use breathing. You can use tree hugging. You can use just sitting still in the corner. What we're looking for in yoga is finding those spaces. And we know from the studies that yoga has many benefits with people with depression. It will lower cortisol, it will improve sleep, it will reduce fatigue, it will reduce stress, and reduce anxiety, help with coping, help with well-being, and improve memory. So give it a go. And there's nobody that's good at yoga and nobody that's bad at yoga. It's not about good and bad. It's about just being there and experiencing and practicing it and just doing a little bit each day. Like 5 minutes a day is all my idea is just see if you can find the spaces for 5 minutes a day. So research, 2 yoga classes per week for 3 months. Depression scores improved by 50%. Anxiety scores improved by 30%. Overall well-being scores improved by 65%. Are you ready to do yoga yet? And of course, we've got to do yoga next door, but there's yoga everywhere. And there's actually even a app that you can get on your phone that you can link to your TV, which is called Anytime Yoga. So anytime at 3 o'clock in the morning, do some yoga. There's always yoga at any time of the day. So we've put this all together because we love yoga, we love nutrition, we love all the other parts of the mind map, and I'd love to work with you on the mind map. So I've got a program called the Happiness Within Project, and the idea is to combine what we have in the yoga room to what we have in the naturopathy room and putting it together in a program. So the cost is $595. It goes over usually about 6 months, and includes an initial consult with me and 5 follow-up consults, and it includes a yoga for 6 classes. So you could do that as 6 classes altogether, or you could spread it over the 6 months, whichever you'd prefer to do. And so if you'd like to book in, let me know, because we'd love to see you as part of our clinic and to help you find some strategies around depression, stress, and anxiety and become happiness within. So that would be fantastic. So see you soon.